So we're going to talk today about the outlook politically in the United States over the next couple of election cycles. And we're going to have two very different conversations in this first segment. First, I'm going to talk about what I believe is an overtly black and white approach to figuring out what the general strategy of the left should be over the next couple of election cycles based on what happened Tuesday. The second piece of it is going to be very tactical, actually. It's going to be very much about talking points and how to fight on very specific issues, the messaging of the right. Both of these are important, but let's start with the bigger picture first. There are two conflicting interpretations that are being repeated uncritically, in a sense, about what happened on Tuesday. Now, what happened on Tuesday was very bad for Democrats, and it bodes very poorly. It does not signal that 2022 is going to be great for Democrats, and maybe even 2024, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But one reaction to what happened Tuesday is, whoa, Democrats went too far left. India Walton, socialist in Buffalo, New York, got defeated easily by a write-in candidate. Democrats need to come back to the middle. The reaction by many to what happened in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe losing there to Glenn Youngkin after Ralph Northam won by 9 in 2017. Democrat won by 9. Now Republican ended up winning by a couple of points. The reaction there has been Democrats need to go further to the left. This centrist establishment, milquetoast Terry McAuliffe, that's not what is going to lead Democrats to victory in the future. And the truth is the world is just more complicated than that. And unfortunately, partially because of the way corporate media is structured and functions, and partially because we have a tendency to want simple one-factor explanations for things, a lot of these false black-white dichotomies are not going to lead to any success for the left, which ultimately is what I care about. So let's look at a couple of examples. Here's one headline from Common Dreams, which says, progressives on the Virginia loss. Corporate Democrats have only themselves to blame. It's conservative Dems who've ensured that every day for the last several months, the headlines are about how we aren't delivering paid leave, prescription drug reform, elder care, or voting rights. And that the problem is that if the Democratic candidate had been much more to the left in Virginia, Virginia would have been held by Democrats. And we're going to link to this article, and you can analyze it and think about it. Contrasting narrative is about socialist India Walton in Buffalo was a bad idea. Incumbent Brown declares Buffalo mayor write-in win over socialist India Walton. This is a New York Post article. New York Post is sort of like Fox News, owned by News Corporation. The incumbent Democratic mayor of Buffalo, running as a write-in candidate, declared victory Tuesday night as he held a nearly 20-point lead over his Democratic Party opponent. India Walton, a socialist backed by many high-profile progressives, refused to concede to Mayor Brown in the highly publicized contest until her campaign sees all the votes. And this has led to a number of arguments that the problem is that that's too far left. Now, here's the reality. Both are true. Both are true. How can both be true? Well, it is true that socialism isn't very popular in the United States. And right now, there aren't many socialists. And that could be a factor in Buffalo. It's plausible that in Buffalo, one of the reasons that India Walton didn't win and lost to a write-in candidate is that there's not that many socialists in Buffalo. And we learned from the 2020 Democratic Party that Democratic primary rather, ideas that seem popular on Twitter and Reddit are not actually as popular among the average Democratic voter. That is true in a sense, and India Walton being a socialist could be a factor. Now, some are saying race is a factor, although the incumbent is black. And there's all sorts of different arguments being made. But at least when it comes to the Buffalo mayoral race, it doesn't seem that being a socialist helped India Walton. So that's a consideration. At the same time, Terry McAuliffe was a milquetoast, uninspiring, centrist Democrat in Virginia. And that was a factor there. There were also other factors in Virginia. The fact that the election for a long period of time was run as a sort of referendum on Trump when Trump wasn't even running, and Youngkin was sort of careful not to denounce nor embrace Donald Trump. So that was a factor. There were a lot of different factors. The fact that the right very successfully played on fear and anger over critical race theory, which isn't even being taught to kids in Virginia. Okay, but the common thread in both elections is that voters were motivated by fear and anger to vote for someone other than Terry McAuliffe in Virginia and India Walton in Buffalo, New York. Fear and anger motivate people more effectively than, hey, we're going to do green energy, or we're going to replace some police with social workers, or whatever the case may be. In Buffalo, it was sort of traditional Democrat Byron Brown who did it and said, you don't want that. You don't want that. This is safer. That's dangerous. You should be afraid of that. In Virginia, it was radical Republican Glenn Youngkin. Different populations. Virginia is more of a 50-50 state overall. Buffalo is I believe Joe Biden got like 77% of the vote, or no, maybe it was 67. Joe Biden won Buffalo easily in 2020, but it's more Democratic establishment rather than like progressive socialist Democrats. So yes, Democrats ran a terrible campaign in Virginia focused on Trump, who wasn't really involved. McAuliffe could have won if the climate were actually, we are running against Trump the way Biden did. That's totally plausible. We'd be having a different conversation right now. But the takeaway here is the Democratic Party electorate is more centrist than it seems on Twitter and Reddit. We learned that in the 2020 primary. But at the same time, there is no one explanation as to what Democrats need to do. And the first mistake, if we even want to have this conversation, is we can't restrict ourselves to an analysis that is, to win, Democrats need to move to the middle, or to win, Democrats need to move to the left. There is not one thing Democrats need to do. And in mayoral elections versus state Senate and rep versus Senate and House of Representatives, governor and president, there is not one answer. And unless we can first agree there is not one answer, we're probably not going to get more productive conversations, unfortunately. One of our sponsors today is Blue Chew, a unique online service delivering the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis in a chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. And they're giving my audience an entire month's supply for free. So if you think you could benefit from an extra boost of confidence when it's time, all you have to do is take a short quiz on their website. A licensed doctor approves your prescription. The medication comes straight to your home within days in a discreet package. No driving around to the doctor's office or the pharmacy. No waiting around. No awkward conversations with your doctor. All of Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. The entire process is just a few clicks. Go to bluechew.com. The link is underneath this video. They'll give you an entire month's supply for free when you use the promo code PACMAN. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping.